Ayy, look, yeah, ayy. I'm in the lab like Dexter, brand new batch he tested. I'm with all the extras, don't try and bitch, I'm pressure. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers.
We'll go ahead and move on to our next topic. And that's with the playing tournament. Obviously the playing tournament got implemented during the bubble season, to help, teams that were right around the corner of making the playoffs, during that COVID season, but of course weren't unable to, finish out that the rest of the season, however many games they had left. So, obviously Adam Silver implemented this playing tournament, which was pretty entertaining for these last couple of seasons, but now it's pretty much a full-time mandatory thing, moving forward. So with that being said, how valuable is the NBA playing tournament?
I mean, I don't mind it, man. I never had anything against the playing tournament. I'm actually a fan of the playing tournament. I mean, like, especially think about it this year with how close 7 through 10 is. They're literally just right there, neck and neck with each other, constantly changing day by day. And in a sense, like even last year with the playing games, you had Minnesota versus the Clippers, and that was super entertaining. You had the Pelicans and then the Clippers, and that was entertaining as well. And I just feel like there's just this competitive edge that just like starts off the playoffs when a playing tournament happens. And I feel like it gives the team 7 through 10 a chance to really compete for their spot. And in a sense, it's like a validation, especially considering how close those seeds are. They're always separated by 1 or 2 games, and, teams will really claw their way into the playoffs. But I do get the opposite side of the argument where it's like, well, you didn't win enough games or you didn't have that tiebreaker. That's why you shouldn't make the playoffs, and, you shouldn't be rewarded. But, if you're a team that's a 7th seed and, you lose that first game to the 8th seed, and then you lose another game to the 9th and 10th seed. I mean, what does that say about your team? If you can't really beat those teams, are you really prepared to go into the playoffs? And, you saw the Pelicans last year. They got in through the play-in tournament, and they did a pretty good job considering their roster against the Phoenix Suns. You saw how Brandon Ingram performed in games like that. I feel like they're only bolstered by the playing tournament. So I'm a huge fan of it. I don't think the NBA should scrap it. I think it's a very valuable starter to kick off the playoffs.
I wasn't with the idea like the last couple of years, but seeing how competitive it's bringing the NBA now, like the bottom, not even like the bottom. Like you go to Portland, they're 13th seed, but they're only 3 games at the playoffs. We ain't seen that a lot. We seen the 13th seed 5 years ago. What were they? 15, 16, 17 wins, 12th seed, 18 wins, 11th seed even. It was like 27 wins from them. And we got the 11th seed sitting at 37 wins, and it's competitive. So I do think that the play-in tournament now it brings more value to the NBA than it done in the past. I feel like this year, especially in the West, from 12 to 5 or 4, it's extremely close. And let's say we didn't have that play-in tournament. Teams like 9, 10, 11, they didn't get the opportunity to play. It's like, hey, like I'd be said last year, Pelicans had that chance. They got that chance. And when they faced the Suns first round, it was phenomenal. So they're outside of that, basically that 1 through 8. They got to face the Suns. They made it through the plans, and it was good. Same as Minnesota. Minnesota going up against Clipper and then putting up another entertaining series against Memphis that first round. It just shows me like, hey, these teams that are sitting outside the real playoff bracket, they still can compete in the playoffs. And, this right here, the playing gives them an opportunity to have another chance instead of them just being out the box. So I do like the idea. I feel like it's more competitive. I feel like teams are, fighting more. You got the teams like Jazz. You have teams like Brooklyn right now sitting in what, 5th seed in the East?
Yeah, they just went up.
They just went up 5th seed. They've been missing KD, Kyrie. They made a lot of trades this year. They fired their coach. They've been going through a lot, and they're still sitting at the 5th seed competing. So to see teams like that get an opportunity and a chance to fight and compete, it's cool. So I didn't rock with the playing idea after the bubble tournament. I didn't like it, but I see how it's value, and I'm rocking with it. So I think it's good for them to keep it. I feel like it's going to be more competitive every single year, especially coming down to these last 10 games. We're seeing a lot of teams. We're seeing OKC fight. We're seeing the Jazz fight. We're seeing the Lakers fight. Even without LeBron for almost 15 games these last month and a half, we're seeing them fight. So it's good to see. I like it.
I mean, I agree. It's entertaining basketball for sure. But to be completely honest, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the playing tournament. I do understand that, I believe it made sense, for the COVID season during the bubble season. Obviously, I believe the only reason why Adam Silver implemented this whole playing tournament was to give Zion Williamson, the Pelicans, a fair shot at making the postseason, because that during that time it was either them or the Portland Trailblazers that were in the hunt for that 8th seed. And it was a very, very competitive race. And with the way things were shaping up during the month of March and late February, it looks like the Pelicans were going to snatch up that 8th seed from the Portland Trailblazers with the way the Blazers were injured and depleted. And of course, Memphis was in the running as well, but those guys were injured as well. So obviously it's high stakes basketball, and of course, as a fan and as a viewer of the game, you're gonna enjoy watching stuff like that. You're gonna enjoy watching the games, and I completely understand that. But I look at it from the other side. I look at it from the other perspective, where it's not necessarily fair to teams to the 7th seed. It's not necessarily fair to teams of the 8th seed. Teams that have earned their right to be sitting at the 7th and the 8th seed. Those guys fought all season to be sitting in those seeds, and they did all that. They defied all the odds, and they beat all the tiebreakers. You have to earn that spot, and I feel like if you're number 7 or number 8, it should be solidified. It should be done right then and there. Right now I feel like the NBA and Adam Silver, he's gifting the 9th seed and the 10th seed and potentially the 11th seed an opportunity to make the playoffs, which I don't believe is fair to those teams sitting at number 7 and number 8, because they earn the right to be in that position. And then obviously the teams that are below that, obviously they didn't do enough to be in that spot. And obviously it's good basketball being played when we see the Pelicans and the Timberwolves and how they made the playoffs last year and what they were able to accomplish in the first round of the playoffs, getting sent home, but they put up a hell of a fight, which is very, very entertaining. And I know the NBA is all about ratings, so obviously Adam Silver saw that the ratings were going sky high, and obviously he wasn't going to just scrap this whole idea. So now that now that it's mandatory going forward, and now that we're going to be seeing the playing tournament for years to come, it just makes the playoff race a little makes it interesting, of course. But at the end of the day, if you're a team that's not necessarily good enough to be a top 6 seed in the Western Conference, you put the idea in your mind that, well, we might not be good enough for it to be a top 6 team in the West, but if we're just good enough to be the 10th seed, or if we're good enough to be the 9th seed and give ourselves an opportunity to be in the play-in tournament, then obviously we'll take our chances with the win or go home situation with any team that are sitting 7th and 8th. So I just don't necessarily think it's fair. But obviously with high stakes basketball being played, it is something that I enjoy watching right before the playoffs. Obviously it's good to see teams that that are sitting at 9th and 10th push teams that are sitting at 7th and 8th to the limit. But at the end of the day, I would much rather have the NBA go back to its traditional format where it's top 8 teams, and obviously you just cut it off there. Top 8 and that's it. No 9th seed, no 10th seed, no 11th seed. If you're sitting in any of those seeds, you start thinking about the offseason, you start thinking about the draft lottery. You shouldn't be rewarded for being pretty much terrible for majority of the year, but just good enough to be 9th or 10th. So that's pretty much where I'm at with it. But now that it's pretty much it's implemented for the NBA moving forward, I'm gonna have to sit here and enjoy the playing tournament for years to come. But
record a new hit, then we making us a film. Wouldn't sign a deal if I got a couple mil. Been in the lab, now they throwing out deals. Me and now Lakes, now that's overkill.